And we're going.
All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead, pour white lightning straight under your brain. Today we've got a bit of potpourri. See, you said that and then you made me forget it. I had a question I sent to Sam that we're going to talk about, and he wanted me to try and remember it verbatim. How do I say? From what I can see of the program you're doing, your coach doesn't know what they're doing. So hit me up if you want a more beneficial program in a non-asshole way.
Okay, so I sent you a response to that, and we'll get into that. But I wanted to start with kind of coaching etiquette, because poaching clients is kind of frowned upon. But there's okay, so there's different situations. Like, so I work in my garage and I train people, and it's an exclusive group. Usually it's referral based, but you know, I might talk to somebody and try to get them as a client, even though I know they're going to another gym. That's perfectly fine, right? That's just advertising yourself, marketing yourself. That's all sales. All sales is trying to pull you away from the other person who does the same thing you do, right? But you're in a different situation because you're actually in a gym that has trainers going around, and in the gym you're in, they contract.
I don't know how Planet Fitness does it, and they just started having trainers there, and there's one or two, and I don't see them very often, so I don't know how many clients actually work. The one I go to, you know, technically they don't allow outside trainers.
Okay, so then that means they hire their trainers.
But if you're not wearing like a business, like you're not wearing a business shirt with a logo, I couldn't go in there with one of your Real Fitness shirts. That would be too obvious. So if you don't make it obvious and you don't get in people's way, there are at least 5 other independent trainers that I've seen in there.
Okay. So it's, well, Planet Fitness is what it is. Let's talk about normal gyms other than Planet Fitness. Okay, so there's 2 types. One would be like your box gym, Lifetime, 24-hour fitness, Gold's Gym, whatever. They hire their trainers, and all the trainers work for the actual company, and all the sales go through the company. And then you have gyms that will contract out their trainers, but everything is still in-house underneath that one roof, right? And in both of those situations, poaching is frowned upon. First of all, because you're undermining your fellow employees in the first one, and second of all, there's a cohesiveness of a building, of the gym itself, that even though they're all contract and they're independent, you don't want infighting among that. So there's that cohesiveness, and so that would be more the situation you would see, right, where you're at. And that's what I wanted to talk to, because again, from my perspective, I don't work for a gym. I don't work in a gym. I have my own practice in my own place. So it's just normal sales. But the etiquette, since I have worked in those situations, the etiquette around that is really tricky, because now we got some moral and ethical questions going on here. Because yes, poaching is frowned upon, and it's not good to just kind of undercut people around you from a professional sense. But if you see something that is actually bad, wrong, or badong, as Kung Pao would say,
the great classic,
great classic badong, then you kind of have a moral obligation to do or say something. And if you don't have a personal relationship with this trainer, or even not even, sometimes you don't even know them from Adam because they're just selling programs, then now it gets a little bit more tricky. And
I had a real problem with that where I started, which was a box gym with one trainer in particular. Okay. There were other trainers there that I was like, I don't know about that approach or this approach. There's this one kid who I knew because I went to the gym before I started working there. I was a member at the gym before I started working there, and I'd seen this guy, and he's one of those trainers that we warn about of. He got into training because he liked going to the gym and he was in good shape. And pretty much right out of high school, he got the cheap, worthless cert that they would have you get to start working there, and started training people. And I've mentioned this before of what the heck is the point of the lying sideways leg press? That's where I first saw this, was this guy. And I would, in general, I really don't like to, and I've mentioned this before. I hate the clickbait headlines of, and this is where I stopped going to teenagers when they started doing this stuff of, if your trainer's doing this, he's wrong. And I'm like, okay, well, generally speaking, I don't like to criticize another trainer or another program unless I'm very familiar with the situation, because I don't know why the trainer is having the person do that. I don't know that person's background. I don't know their capability, their goals, their all of these things we've talked about of what you need to do, what you need to know and establish before you start training someone. That makes it difficult for me to just automatically assume that that's garbage and you shouldn't do that.
Well, let's kind of break this down by situation, and let's start with the most extreme. So what you just said with the lying sideways leg press, it's basically the same thing as doing a lateral step up, right? But at the same
you're
time,
contorting your spine in a really funky way.
yeah. And so we see a little bit of danger there, like somebody's going to actually hurt themselves. So in that situation, you're not trying to get the business. You're just saying, oh, that's a back injury waiting to happen, but you can get the same effect by doing a lateral step up over there on the box and then just walk away. So yeah, if you want business down the road, well, in this case, you set the seed, but you're not poaching, right? You just kind of just threw something out there. And it's kind of a soft entry to the whole situation. And what I sent you was, if you have a kind of the talking relationship with this person, is you can just start asking questions. Hey, I saw you doing this. Why? What's the goal here? Or hey, you did these 2 exercises back to back. What were you trying to get out of that? Because I'm curious. I'm just really curious, because I see you working out here all the time, and it just seemed different to me. I've never seen that before, and you can just kind of prod a little bit. And then if it's something completely ridiculous, like the spine contorted, oh, well, I saw in this place, name your source, that can lead to long-term injury in the spine. And so you just throw these things out there, like you're not trying to give them advice. You're not trying to do this. Just, oh, well, I was just curious because I had seen this. And enough of those things will start to get them to question, well, am I hurting myself? Or am I doing something weird? And then they'll actually ask their coach. They'll say, hey, why do you have me doing this? And depending on how good they are at talking, they might have a good answer or might not. And but enough of those things together, and they're going to start questioning. And that's kind of the best way to start. The other thing that I did a lot in, because in 24 I didn't know what I was doing, so we're just going to throw that out of there. But when I worked at Velocity, and then I became kind of one of the senior coaches, and it was sold to another company, and they started bringing in a lot of contract coaches because they didn't want to hire coaches. I was one of the last people to hang on as the hired coaches. And you saw a lot of crazy shit. But one of the things I would do is I would just I would make myself seen coaching my people, because the contrast was obvious on how much attention I paid to them. I wasn't on my cell phone. The attention to detail, the results that were coming out of it, because you could see the weekly gains from these people. So I would just make myself seen. And if I saw somebody that I kind of thought I could help, I might have planned my stuff to be kind of near them a lot. so they could see me. And it has been the case where they say, hey, I noticed you do this. Is that something good for me? It's like, well, I know you train with so and so, so I don't want to like step on their toes. And they're like, no, I'm like, I'm not going anywhere with this. And then it's like, then it's their decision.
Yeah.
It is slightly poaching, but at least it's not in a very overt way. Again, this is one of those, is it wrong or right? Yeah, business wise, it's a little bit wrong, but at the same time, if you see somebody being done wrong by their trainer, then it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, another thing I thought is that I could, I didn't think to ask about their coaching staff, because these were a couple of softball girls. They were wearing college softball program t-shirts, and so I asked them if they were still active playing, and they were, and I'd asked if they were given a program or if they were just working on their own. What I didn't think to ask until after the fact is I try and keep a mental catalog of programs that I've encountered, so I know, the high schools around here and which seem to have decent strength and conditioning programs. This one doesn't, that one does for the football team. Like my son's high school had a decent strength and conditioning program for the football kids. That's why I volunteered to help the swim team, because, and his coach went to a UC school. She swam Division I, and she had never been given an education, by an actual strength and conditioning coach. She had never been shown how to do proper off-season work to supplement the pool work. She knew the pool inside and out, and she had, she got good results from coaching technique and the drills she would have them do, but she needed help, not just with the programming, but then with proper coaching for the technique.
Well, and this is something in coaching that is important. If you want to stand out, be able to know the abstract. And when people talk, so you brought up swimming. Okay, swimming, we do the breaststroke, we do this, we do that. How do I strengthen these muscles? When in the abstract, you need to be telling your athlete, look, most of your activity is in water. We need to do some dry land training so you stay healthy, because fluid dynamics do not make for good bone growth and things like that. So, and eventually, if you have a deficiency in those other things, it will start bleeding over into your performance in the pool, because your body senses these things. It says, wow, if I put too much pressure on this arm, it's going to break. Well, it's going to automatically stop giving you the force production you need to propel yourself through the water, even though in the water it's not going to break, but your body senses that the bones are weak. Another good example is something I work with a lot is in baseball. People who start young in baseball, and especially the ones that are shown to be promising pitchers from the beginning, they tend to do everything on their dominant side. And they'll walk in, and it's mirroring me, but it's not mirroring me, but that's my right shoulder down. I'll be like, oh, it's a right-handed pitcher, isn't it? They're like, how'd you know? Well, their left shoulder's locked up. Well, when that gets, I'm exaggerating. I've seen some that were really bad, but that was an exaggeration. But when your spine and your T-spine and your rib cage get so shifted, everything locks up and your scapula can't move. And all of a sudden your performance goes even on the good side, because everything's locked up. And so you have to be able to think in the abstract. You develop a high performance human being and then address the sport. So go on with your softball girls again.
Well, the the point was, uh, I should have thought of a way to politely press just a little more to find out, were you given an off-season program by your softball coach or by a strength and conditioning coach? Do you even have a strength and conditioning coach? To plant that seed of, that's where I'm different is,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you're not, I mean, you know things because you've coached so many pitchers and baseball players, you know the body mechanics of throwing, and thus what you need to do in the gym to enhance that, right? As make them better and make them more more sustainable, less injury prone. Okay. But you're not in there actually coaching them in a bullpen session,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. Well, that's because you're busy doing other things. You're busy researching and learning other things. Your coach probably just went to a 3-day seminar on strength and conditioning, or maybe talked to the football team strength and
I was going to
conditioning
say that's
coach.
better than most.
Yeah. Or just looked up online
Well,
and found something that looked good.
what they typically do is what they did.
Or that we did a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is where the art comes into it, because this is one of my beefs with CrossFit, because CrossFit, they call it a sport, but the sport is the gym. There's no art to that. It's you use clean and jerks and squats and lunges and running and all these things to get better at clean and jerk and squats and running and things like that. Whereas I got to use cleans and jerks and squats and lunges and bench press and everything to make somebody throw a ball 99 miles an hour
without ripping their
elbow or shoulder apart.
Yeah.
There's an abstraction to that takes a very fine touch.
And it is intellectually exhilarating. You know, I had this kid that I was working with after he graduated. He was on the swim team, so he knew me and I knew him, and he didn't want to stop swimming, but he was done swimming competitively, but he wanted to get stronger. And anytime he did any kind of deadlift variation, his low back was hurting. And I had a little bit of experience with this with coaching the swim kids, but I went down a rabbit hole, and I shared some of it with you that, you know, you didn't know because you haven't had to deal with swimmers until now, and found a lot of journal articles about, you know, lumbar pain due to excessive lordotic curve that's created from a combination of being horizontal so much, and then then the rapid limited motion of the kicks. And this is exacerbated by one of the things that swimmers do, competitive swimmers. If you're in the pool a lot doing drills, you'll do what are called kick sets. You get a float board because your arms are going to wear out way before your legs do. And your legs, you want to strengthen those because that's your primary form of propulsion, because there's so much more muscle mass there. Well, that just accentuates the problem, because now with this rest here, you're accentuating that curve even more. And because you're focusing so much on the kicks, you're getting even more, you know, motion and force there. And sometimes, you know, frequently, in order to get more propulsion and stay in the pool longer, they'll put on fins. And again, that really accentuates it, because you're adding an artificial extension to your leg that it's not meant to have, it's not used to having. So there's even more torque and motion on that lumbar. And if you look at a map of the muscles, there's not much muscle down there. It's just all connective tissue.
The lumbar? Well, I mean,
I
mean, specific to the lumbar, yes, except for the QLs, but the spinal erectors go the length of the back, the lats cover everything, but then the obliques come in, and the obliques cover that difference.
the lats, that thoracolumbar fascia is what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, that big piece of connective tissue. It's a
There's
diamond in the middle
yeah,
of your
there's a
back.
big
Yeah.
fat diamond of connective tissue, and that's where your low back can get so tight so easily, because you have just a huge chunk of connective tissue there, and if you're not treating it right, it's going to stiffen up. And if you pull it into an excessive curve, you make that face long enough, it's going to stick that way. Mom was kind of right. It's why sitting is so bad. We sit so long that our hip flexors get used to seizing up, and our glutes get used to elongating, and they kind of stick that way.
There's the thoracolumbar fascia.
It's a big honking chunk of connective tissue.
Yeah. And for the, if you can see my cursor, for those in the audience that want to know why when your butt is tight or your hamstring is tight, your back hurts on the other side, there's your connection right there. Everything goes like that. The stress goes in this order right here. And consequently, on the inside of the leg, when you're talking about your pitchers, a tight groin on the opposite side of their pitching arm will reduce the external rotation of their shoulder. And so if you have your pitchers foam roll their inner thigh before they pitch, they'll get an extra couple degrees of external rotation, which can be a mile or two extra, per hour, which can make a big difference. Yeah, 95 and 97 are huge, is a huge difference. So there you go. Thank you very much. Send me $100
exactly
for that advice
but
there.
That's the exciting thing about training, is that you're talking about the human body, which is a very complicated machine. And so when you have to dig in and study and try and think through, okay, why is this happening and how do we fix it? That's where it stays very engaging.
Well, let's recap what we started with, because we kind of gone afield a little bit. Poaching clients is frowned upon, but there is an ethical reason to do it, and there's a right way to do it. And the first step is just asking a few questions without trying to sell something, and doing a good job in front of that person. Showing how you're different instead of telling, as we keep saying, showing, not telling, right? And it really, I think the biggest one is the attention, the cell phone use. When you're engaged with your client, and that's not just nitpicking their technique, that's conversation, that's joking along with them, that's keeping the flow going. Because you can do things in your training program to keep the flow going, so you don't stop every time you switch up an exercise or something. So you can do all of these things that people will eventually notice, because then they're gonna see you working with your client, and they're gonna kind of glance over at their trainer, and he's gonna be, oh yeah, 2 more sets, and those are things that are going to stand out. Then when they start getting curious, then you can get into the other stuff, and then it's kind of not, you're obligated to answer their questions. So the ethics go out the window at that point, because what they're asking you, they're already dissatisfied. You didn't do that, other than doing well by the current clients you have. Another thing you can do if you don't have a client at the time is, when you're doing your own workouts, show how meticulous you are with your own workouts. Have an iPad open with documents on it, and you're writing in your journal, and then do your work and record everything, and make sure it looks professional when you're doing your own workouts. So that's another thing you can do too. You're if you work in a gym, and you want more clients, your workout time is advertising time, because people are going to see how you do things, and then they're going to see you go in the locker room, come back out in your uniform. So that is also really, really important, especially if you've hit a slump, because that's a good way to kind of get people to pay attention to you, which goes into the thing, don't be the trainer that looks like they need a trainer. You do need to look like you at least picked up a weight here and there.
Have you noticed that about health officials, like state health officials, especially? They're coming out and giving us all this guidance on stuff, and I'm like, you are not the picture of health there, chief. I'm not sure I want to listen to you.
What did you end on right before I brought us back? Because I had a thought on that. That's why I wanted to wrap it up.
I don't know what was that? I was talking about the uh um the intellectual stimulation from the need to study and figure out, and because you're dealing with a very complicated piece of machinery when you're talking about the human body.
Oh yeah, yeah. Kind of my sales pitch to a lot of parents, and again, I work predominantly, and it's mostly just regional. Around here, the biggest, obviously football is big, but they keep everything in house in Friendswood. But soccer and baseball are the two biggest things around here, because that's what middle class people do. And I always sell it on I'm going to make your kid healthy. And one of the things people don't know, and it's hard to get across to them, is certain colleges recruit multi-sport athletes because they're healthier than year-round single sport athletes. They're more well-rounded. They're typically more well-balanced physically and mentally. They don't burn out as fast. All of these things. Well, baseball is year-round, so I have to deal with that. And the parents refuse to not put their kids in a select league and pay $10,000 for them to sit in a dugout and pick their nose. So it's what I kind of make myself is I make myself their second sport. I make myself as different than the baseball field as I possibly can. And I don't necessarily tell the parents that right away. I tell the parents that after I've gotten the results, but I make myself their second sport. I balance them back out.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're healthy. They're not going and having Tommy John surgery at 16 years old, as a lot of kids are now. So it's that's kind of, think in the abstract as a strength and conditioning coach or a fitness instructor. Now, if you're in bodybuilding, that's different because your sport is the building of muscle. But if you're just trying to help people be healthier and live better, look at their life. So we'll go to regular life. Look at their life and make that their sport, and then look at the injury concerns or the ramifications of what you're doing to that. So your accountant, will bring the accountant back into this. Or was that from our private talk?
No, you mentioned that. No, you didn't. We didn't.
No.
We hadn't started recording then.
Okay. Well, okay. Before we started recording, we talked about an accountant. But okay, so we'll bring back this imaginary accountant from years past. They sit all day at a desk going,
yeah,
click, 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 click. And so we've got probably wrist issues, right? Definitely low back issues because they're in a sitting position all day. If they do it like this, we probably got some excessive kyphosis of the T-spine. I would say probably some shoulder problems coming out of it, neck pain. And so now we're developing this person based on what they do all day long, every day. And then our visual of when they come in and we do our evaluation. So now that's my sport. So what do I got to do? I got to do a lot of posture work. And not only, okay, so a lot of posture work, I've got to turn their glutes back on, probably develop them a little bit, open up the hips because they're going to be tight. And specific to the hips, the psoas is not only going to be tight, but it's going to be weak. And nothing worse than a tight, weak muscle. Everybody thinks tight, strong, and loose, weak. No, a tight, weak muscle is the worst thing you can have in your body. And it's common in the psoas, which is the muscle that runs from the bottom 3 vertebrae to the inner thigh through the hip. So it is tight in hip flexion. So when you're sitting, and so I'm taking these things into account. And not only am I training them, but I'm also trying to instill a mindset of, hey, these are the things we're working on. You do this all day, which is counter to the things we're working on. So I want you to do X, Y, Z while you're working, at least multiple times a day. I want you to maybe set a timer on your phone or whatever you have in your office to ding, and you go, oh, and you sit back and get in good posture and at least sit that way for a little bit and try to work that way for a little bit. And you're going to go back to your old habit because you're comfortable and it's tiring to do it the right way. And then ding, oh, okay, I'm back up. So those are the kind of things that you just change the sport. And it's you got to think in the abstract, because their real life is their reality. And you have to kind of get them thinking outside of the box, not just train them in the gym.
That's all I got.
Yeah, that I think that closes that out, because the original thing was it just cracked me up when you sent me that text. And then I was laying in bed and I was like, no, this is actually a serious topic. We need to talk about this. Because there is some nuance to it. And then the additional stuff just kind of flowed out of this conversation. We didn't prep that, but
What else are we talking about?
cell phones,
There.
cell phone etiquette.
Okay, so I didn't know where you were going when you first mentioned this the other day, I did what you were just saying you were doing. It suddenly dawned on me. Oh wait, no, yeah, this is an interesting bit. So start us off.
Okay, so we talked about this off air, and I should have brought the meme up, but there's a meme out there that says the 4 levels of friendship, and it was like, I want we'll hang out every once in a while, we'll hang out all the time, I would take a bullet for you, and then the 4th one was, I'll pick up the phone when you call. That's me, okay? Because don't call an introvert. That's like the worst thing you could see is your phone ringing. It's very unsettling. And it kind of drives you crazy a little bit. But the other part of it is, so that's just person, everybody likes to call themselves an introvert, but only like 30% of the population is.
Yeah.
But
and then you add on any kind of anxiety disorder on top of that, and oh boy, is it fun.
But then you add on, you call somebody. I get calls from people and I'm working, right?
And it's extra frustrating when I got to pick this up. What is this? This might be important, whatever. And
you're making the decision. Yeah. Is this important? Is it not? Okay. If it's important, they'll leave a message, and then they don't leave a message. Right. So if you call somebody, leave them damn message. But with cell phones particularly, we have to adapt to technology. And that's one of our themes with a lot of things, is we have to adapt to modern society. With diet and nutrition, we have to adapt to readily available food all the time, anytime we want it, which is why people get fat so easy. It's not what we're eating for the most part. It's the fact that we can go get it with no cost anytime we want, and we do, because
we don't do anything to offset it,
because we're still hardwired to crave food and store fat, because fat is survival in nature, right? It is an easy way to store energy without being bloated with water, because carbohydrates have water attached to them. So that's going off the side, but we have to adapt is the main thing. And the thing is, you have this on you all the time for the most part. It's sitting in your pocket. It's sitting on the shelf next to you. It's sitting wherever. It's usually sitting on one of the boxes or windowsills in my gym. And it's only courteous to me. It's only courteous to ask if you can call first, because we have this thing called text message. And you can send a text that says, hey, too long to text, can I call? Or, hey, it's an emergency, can you give me a call? Or something along those lines. where the person receiving that knows whether it's important or not, whether they need to pick it up or not. Or if you dismiss a call, it's not there for you when you get off work to be a notification on your phone again. And so you never know where that person is with that device that you can call them on. And yet you're saying in your head, well, they have this phone, they can pick it up, but they might be in a situation where they can't pick it up. And not only
Yeah,
that, it's detrimental to the situation.
they have they have their phone on them because it fits in their pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So of course they have their phone on them. You always have your phone on them, but that doesn't mean they are in a position to answer it for a call. Where my brain kind of dinged on this last night or the night before after we talked is it just suddenly dawned on me the rapid the rapid pace of changing culture due to changing technology that has happened, in the last 20 years, but it seems to have been accelerating in the past 10 years or so. And say about 10 years ago, when cell phones were becoming more and more ubiquitous, and you were starting to get more and more smartphones out there. We weren't all walking around with the Nokia bricks anymore, although I kind of miss the Nokia brick because it's the best way to kill an intruder. But I feel like it was considered rude to text, like unless you were just texting
because
friends.
it's less personal.
Because it's less personal. It's something kids did. It was less personal. It was...
Which I understand that argument, but you can text to call.
Yeah, but
that's my point. You could say, "Hey, are you available? Can we talk?"
My thinking was, it kind of dawned on me, that was only about 10 years ago. And now literally your grandma has a cell phone and texts you.
Mm-hmm.
That is literally true now. How rapidly things have changed, that, it's no longer, it didn't stay. That's just the things the kids do. And there's a whole, there used to be a whole text language that's actually kind of coming back now because of the emojis. But when texts were very character limited and cost you money, that's where all the abbreviations and this whole separate slang came through, which is kind of why it was a kid's thing, because adults would look at that and go, "Oh, what?"
There's a good TED talk by Dr. John McWhorter on text language and how it's beneficial.
Interesting. But and yet there are strange ways in which people are not adapting to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a personality type.
It's true.
It's the type that they don't like that unknown out there, that they send a text and they don't know if you read it or if you're going to text back or whatever. So they call because they need you engaged, because they have their conversation they want to have with you. And it's very common in salespeople.
Yeah.
Because engagement is the key. That's why they don't let you leave the dealership, right? Because you're there. They have you there.
Yeah.
And I see that with that personality type. But again, I try to be straightforward with my friends that are like that. Look, here's the golden rule. Before you call me, ask yourself the question, can this be a text? And if it can, just text me. And if it can't, text me first. Are you available for a call? Because then at least I know if I'm in a situation where I can talk,
When you say that, thinking about that, that makes me think, I have to think that the kind of people that have loud, obnoxious phone calls in public are these people who would call you, without a text. They aren't texters. They aren't going to text to see if it's okay. I feel like that's who would have a loud, obnoxious conversation. And your point about, just text, for crying out loud, makes those people all the more obnoxious and annoying.
Mhm.
You know, I get it when you're obviously on some sort of work call or something like that. That's sometimes you can tell that someone is having a business related conversation that I guess obviously can't wait.
Well, and
But
there's some conversations that are you need that more personal touch. Like if I'm going to tell you like your mom died,
mhm,
and I knew that, I would call you for that.
yeah,
You know,
uh,
if I wasn't available to even go see you, but
but
I would warn you that I'm
yeah.
calling. And
But
even
why would
just
you
like,
have that conversation in public? There are some times where I
uh,
accidentally hear things that I wish I didn't hear. And I'm like, why would you say that out loud?
some people just want the attention.
I just, I don't know.
Oh no, but the worst ones though are the ones that call and don't leave a message, because it must not have been that important. Or call and you don't answer and they call right back because they got your voicemail. It's like, no, just,
I didn't answer the first time for a reason.
yeah, if it's an emergency, text me that it's an emergency. You know, we even got a new advancement. I've got this. I can see the text that comes in, but I can't know what your intentions are on the other side of the line.
Mm.
So all I can do is hang up the call from this thing. I can't answer it. I can't do anything else. I can hang up the call so you can leave a voice message, or I could read the text that says, "Oh, this is an emergency. Call me." You know, it's, I don't know. I think courtesy for phone interactions just needs to adjust with the time.
This is a very odd old men ranting at the kids conversation because as I said, that it used to be that only kids would text. It
No, but
wasn't polite. It was
it's reversed,
impersonal.
and it's even
Yeah.
worse because the kids not only call all the time now, they FaceTime.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I see FaceTime popping up on my phone, I'm like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. It is bizarrely worse. Speaking of, did you want to talk about the obnoxious boaters and jet skiers?
Yes. Yeah, we can
That
talk about that.
and this
This is a potpourri.
this got me very cranky. You'd mentioned it before I went down there, and then when we were fishing, you know, kudos to the couple of people I saw who came up. They were on jet skis. They came up. They got close-ish to the pier, but then they stopped. They turned around and they went back the way they came. There were people that seemed to be veering towards the pier where there were half a dozen people fishing.
Mm-hmm. And for those that aren't familiar with fishing, boat noise doesn't make for good fish comfort.
Yes.
When it comes to I'm going to eat, or I'm going to hide under a pile of weeds or something. So we say spook the fish is what it is. And it was even worse the time I told you about, because there were jet skiers that would veer over and then do circles and stuff in front of us and then leave.
I feel like that's obvious trolling at that point.
It
You're,
was.
you're
Oh
trying
yeah,
to be obnoxious.
it was.
And
Especially the one that was doing the circles with the middle fingers up. And
and it
this is
made
what
me
Twitter has done to us, because he's on his jet ski and nobody can do anything unless one of us had a gun, which I'm not promoting violence here. Unless one of us had a gun and we were willing to use it for an annoyance, he had no repercussions for his asshole actions. And that's just the way it is.
maybe we should carry Roman candles next time we go fishing. Uh and it made me, old man cranky, wonder aloud, is it just me and my perception, or are people getting less polite as the years go by? That because the things that so many people complain about, and then some of the people doing the complaining are doing the thing themselves sometimes, and they either don't realize it or they don't care, because we've become so incredibly self-absorbed. And that's what this is. Now, the middle finger guy, that's just a jerk. That's not someone who's that's more than just self-absorption. I feel like most of these people just don't care. You know, it's and you know, the ones that really annoyed us were the boats, and you've got fishing poles. You're going fishing.
So you know what you're doing.
You know what you're doing, and yet you don't bother to change track when you're coming along this way, and you could easily veer away because you know how this works.
Mm-hmm. I think this might be a little bit of creep from social media because, uh, it's been pretty cliche to say for the last, probably about 6 or 7 years that people talk to each other the way they do on Twitter because they have no chance of getting punched in the face, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, eventually that's going to it went into social media and it's going to kind of work its way back out into people's everyday interactions because they're on social media all day, but then they get in a situation, well, you play like you train, right? And so they act like the asshole they are online, the troll they are online. And it's inevitable that it just keeps leaking out until we kind of get a handle on it.
This ties into where we started with the training, and you brought up the desk jockey that has to be retrained. You have to retrain their body because their body has adapted. Their body has adapted to that position. Well, your brain is adapting to what you're doing online, and that is going to necessarily and inevitably translate offline because you have retrained your brain.
Well, let's add a layer to that. Again, this is why I get annoyed when we're called the patriarchy, because we have completely eliminated male aggression from society in children. And guess what? There's actually a positive benefit to it. Mm-hmm. So I was listening to Franz de Waal, who is one of my biology idols, as anybody who's serious into biology should also kind of lean towards. Social biology is ethology is kind of an offshoot of the main subject. And I think the advantage to studying primates is the fact that we don't use our own biases that we look at with humans. And realistically, the behavior is similar, right? And what he wrote a lot on was reciprocity, right? And male conflict especially. And what you saw the difference between males and females in bonobos and chimps and other ape species was that they would fight it out and the males would reciprocate. And it was over. The fight was over. They would get over whatever they fought about and then go on with life and usually actually groom each other afterwards. And so he brought up something when I was listening to him that was very interesting. And it was a study done in Japan where apparently the way they treat, of course, violence is very low in Japan overall. And in young boys, the violence and reciprocity was greater than in the West by far. And from observation, what they saw was what the teachers do and the parents do when two young boys would get into a fight, they would let them fight. And if the fight was too one-sided, i.e. bully beating up, like a 12-year-old beating up an 8-year-old or something, the teachers did not intervene. They got another student to intervene. And so it kind of changed the dynamic quite a bit. And not only did the student intervene, but they intervened and mediated. So they had to get over their difference in real time with another student and not an adult authority figure. And so I guess long story short, from where I started with this, part of the problem is boys should be boys. And we've got a couple generations of not being allowed to do that. And, looking from afar at this jet skier doing the circles in front of us, he was probably about a decade younger than I am. Maybe as much as 15 years.
And as we have often
never
said,
got punched in the face.
That guy has never been punched in the face, and it shows.
Because the teacher intervened every time a conflict arose.
And that's something I hadn't really considered, the depth of this, but I mean, Peterson got in trouble for this, and you've heard other people say this of, The difference, the big difference between male interactions and female or male female is that in male interactions, there is always the threat of violence. There's always the inherent threat of violence. Well, oh, and people freaked out over that. And well, wait a minute, that matters long term. That threat of violence and then the actual violence as a child means that when you grow up, you don't have to be consciously thinking, if this guy's a jerk, I'm going to punch him in the face. It's in the back of your mind. You have trained your brain as we are negatively training our brains with social media. So through those interactions in your formative years, there's a reason they're called formative years, you have trained your brain to act differently, to act with some degree of politeness with another male, because the back of your brain, your subconscious is thinking, if I'm a big fat jerk, he might punch me in the mouth.
We're going to have to go more in detail on this because I didn't know you were going to bring that up, or I would have had prepped.
It just dawned on me.
But yeah, okay. So we'll bring this back up when we do this as a full episode. But I'm wanting to say it's a Scandinavian country that they did a kind of an education program to the parents and teachers, where they separated actual bullying from roughhouse play, or even equitable fights. So one 12-year-old boy, another 12-year-old boy, pretty much the same size, everything else being equal. They get into a fight over something and then it's over. That wasn't a punishable offense. That wasn't something we intervened. But again, 200-pound 15-year-old boy and 100-pound 14-year-old boy. Okay, someone gets involved there because someone else is getting a beat down, right? So they actually separated the difference between the different conflicts of what was bullying and what was actual just difference of opinion that ended up in fists or wrestling or whatever. And the punishments and the interventions were weighted accordingly. And the mental health of these boys, when they got to adulthood, as they followed them through the years, was exceptionally more robust in that group versus the ones where there were interventions for every form of violence. And the way we are in the US, we're just ignoring that. We're ignoring the Japanese studies. We're ignoring this, I'm remembering as a Scandinavian study, but I'll look it up. And every rough and tumble play is unacceptable. Well, maybe that's why some of these kids are getting very violent, because they can't take it out in a regular, I guess, masculine way, a regular developmental way for boys. And this is a delicate topic because bullying is wrong, but at the same time, we have to redefine bullying, because there's a developmental benefit to that. Although I'm going to paraphrase it. I did hear something too that was awesome. It was, I'm going to put it in my own words, but the concept is someone else's. A real man is the one that fights. A real man is the one that fights or that breaks up fights. Okay, isn't not the one that is strong enough to fight, but is strong enough to break up fights. And that was Franz de Waal as well, because he was talking about they were talking about the dominance hierarchy in ape species, and it's not about being the biggest and strongest. It's about all these other traits. And what the alpha males in these chimp troops would more likely do was actually break up fights, one-sided fights, not regular fights, but one-sided fights with the rest of the troop. Because in the real world, and this is same for humans, one strong male will always lose to two somewhat less strong males. And they know that. And we should know that too, because theoretically we're smarter. But
That's why you've talked. That's why you mentioned you've told your friends when you go out, if we get in a bar fight, stay out of my way.
yeah, don't come near me because I'm not looking. But also, I also tell them though, I'm like, if you start a fight, I'm going to let it go. Everybody, I used to have friends because I had that background a little bit that would think they could start a fight because I'm there. And so I had to start telling them, no, if you start it, it's on you, bro. Now, if you're down and he's about to kick your teeth out, I'll step in. But the main part of it where you're just squaring off and doing your thing, it's you, man. You started it. Now, if someone comes up and just like jacks you upside the head, maybe I'll jump in. But the other way around, no, you're not pulling me into fights.
All right. Well, I got nothing else on that. Did you want to shift topics yet again?
Yeah, I think we got our last topic, huh? The one we actually talked about.
Yeah.
As usual, we got to get on this stupid ass COVID shit. Do you want anything before I just bring up what I had?
No, let me see where you're going first before I bring my stuff up.
Let me get the right tab open. I've got a couple things, but they're kind of all related. So we're getting to a point in this process where there's a lot of freaking literature. We're over 2 years into this.
Uh-huh.
And let's see, when did I have? Over a year and a half from when I had COVID. So I am actually in the timeline of one of the studies I bring up here, but we're a long way into this. And one of the big peeves I have is the lack of information we have from our authorities because they just haven't been trying. They've just been pushing a narrative. They haven't been trying to track things properly or do proper studies or anything like that. But luckily, some people have. Johns Hopkins University, and to name one example. But oh no, I clicked on it, but I didn't share.
Yeah, and to that point, this is why I'm going to leave most of my ballot blank, because, and for anyone on my side, quote unquote, all right, yeah, you can blame the people in power and what all they're doing and their narratives and the media, and what have the Republicans actually done to counter it? What have anything at all? It makes me wish
other than Rand Paul.
There's a handful. There's Ron Johnson, Rand Paul, Chip Roy. Those are the names I can think of off the top of my head. 3 names that have actually tried to do something. I wish I could vote for them. I can't. So most of my ballot's going to be blank. I'm voting for the local stuff, and that's about it.
You can also look for the third parties on there because remember the rules about debates and stuff. If they get a certain percentage, they can get into debates. So there's always
that's true. Yeah.
Okay, so this is effects of previous infection and vaccination on symptomatic Omicron infections. Okay, and this is New England Journal of Medicine. Where was I down here? Okay, let's go down to the effectiveness. Here we go. In the discussion. So previous infection with a variant other than Omicron. So this could be anything from Wuhan through Delta, basically, was associated with an approximately 50% reduced risk of infection. Okay, that's not too bad. That's not too bad at all. 2-dose vaccination and no previous infection had negligible effects against BA1 and BA2. And they point out that also most of the sample size from that had their 2 doses more than 8 months earlier. So there we got the waning effect. So basically, if you had your 2 doses, no boosters, 8 months ago, you had almost no protection at all.
Maybe I'm just have conditioned myself to think this, but I see that sentence as infuriatingly slanted. That to me, that second half of that sentence seems like spin.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to say,
it's still well written, because we can get to the results here in a little
okay,
bit. They actually do another sentence to explain. These findings are explained by the short-lived protection of primary series vaccinations. So they acknowledge that it is the short-lived.
right, but I feel like they're trying to say they should have had a shot sooner, or they need to get boosted more often.
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
There's more to, so each studies are specific. That's what people need to know. And so they go to the boosters here, 60% reduced infection, but again, the boosters would be more proximal to where we're at, right? And then hybrid immunity, approximately 50%, which means you had the disease and the shot, right? We go down. Hybrid immunity was 80%. Now, again, that might be proximity too, because you probably had the disease.
Well, no, that's recent booster vaccination. So the previous paragraph was previous infection with a 2-dose vaccination, and which suggests the protection originated from the previous infection. But if you've gotten a recent booster, then it bumped you from 50 to 80.
Oh, crap. I got my tabs off here. Fill some space in for me while I look for what I need. Oh, here we go.
Well, while you're looking, the thought occurs to me is, so the best case scenario there was if you'd gotten a recent booster, but they said earlier that, and my thought is, well, how recent? Because you just showed that if your booster had been 8 months old, then the effect was negligible. Okay. So how often are you going to have to get boosted for it to matter? And remember when they announced that they had a vaccine, we were told 90-something%.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's the thing why antibodies was so overplayed, right? Because if you have a shit ton of antibodies in your body, then obviously you're going to have a greater protection from infection because you already have the immune response you would get when you meet the virus, versus meeting the virus and your body producing the immune response. Even if it's already programmed for it, there's still a little bit of lag there. So when you're talking about infection versus disease, the antibodies are already there because you're basically technically have been infected. You're walking around infected with something that was theoretically harmless to your body, but it mimics something that is out there. And so when that something that's out there comes in, your body's already fighting. It's shooting bullets at nothing, and then something walks in the trail. Versus something walks in the trail and you see it and you take aim and shoot. It takes a second longer, right? Okay, so this was the main thing. Previous infection alone, the vaccine alone, and hybrid immunity all showed strong effectiveness against severe, critical, and fatal COVID-19. Similar results were observed in analysis effective against BA1 infection and the vaccination of mRNA 1273, which I can't remember what that one was. Here's the main thing. No discernible difference in protection against symptomatic BA1, BA2 infection were seen in with previous infection, vaccination, or hybrid immunity. We're still not accepting previous infection in a lot of places. So that's the main thing about that one. This one is a longitudinal study of people who were vaccinated, had no vaccination, but were infected, and then both. And I don't know if our faces are where we see them here, but this chart I have here is the anti-spike RBD is receptor binding domain, which is the part of the spike that binds to the cell and actually gets in it to attach, which is what you want to stop first because that's the first line of defense. And we basically, after 20 months of since previous infection, are basically showing a robust defense with natural infection. So that's pretty awesome. But we don't see that with the other versions of immunity. I'll use my words closely there. This one, here we go. Where's the critical sentence in this one? I need to figure out how you highlight these things. Is there anything you want to add to that before I move on to the next one?
No, I'm just bringing up stuff to get us banned.
Well, this one is out of Virology Journal. They cite a study. The study showed that immune function among vaccinated individuals 8 months after their administration of 2 doses of COVID-19 vaccine was lower than that among unvaccinated individuals. So what this study is about, so now we're going further. So we've established that natural immunity holds, and it holds for longer than vaccinated immunity. And yes, a booster can help even after you've had natural immunity, but that too will wane. And that's what we established with the first two. But now we're looking at the adverse effects of the actual vaccine. And in this study, so they cite the ones we just talked about here. But as a safety measure, further booster vaccinations should be discontinued. Why? Because they decrease your overall immunity, and it could be for any of these reasons that I'm highlighting, including original antigenetic stimulus or antigenetic sin, which we've talked about before, also Hoskins effect. So we have one thing that's robust that most of us have had at this point. And then we have one thing that, yes, it might help in the short term, but in the long term, it might make us sick from everything else more easily. So that's where I was going down with this.
Okay, well,
Don't get us too banned because we got some good stuff in the first part of this.
this is Alex Berenson, who just won his lawsuit with Twitter for banning him over reporting studies that they didn't like. Not for editorializing, not for making claims, just for posting studies with data that the powers that be at Twitter and the government, which colluded with Twitter, didn't like. And so they banned him, and he's sued over that, and he won. And apparently in his settlement, he must have some sort of immunity because he's been saying things on Twitter that would get anyone else banned. I think he must be untouchable at this point. So if you can't trust the Bundesgerichtsminister, who can you trust? Excuse me. So this was a tweet by the German Federal Ministry of Health, admitting that 1 out of every 5,000 COVID jabs cause serious side effects. Not patients. Every injection. 1 in 5,000 people is affected by a serious side effect after COVID-19. If you suspect, get medical attention and report your symptoms. 1 in 5,000. If you had a mild rash for taking a vitamin and it was 1 in 5,000, it would be yanked off the market inside of the day and the company would be sued out of existence.
Now, Are they specific to which one it is? Because AstraZeneca is getting hit hard with a lot of lawsuits.
I
And
don't
I know
know.
that was more common in Europe.
But considering the Pfizer document dumps, I don't know why they're not getting hit hard as well.
Well, because they have immunity.
Well, they shouldn't. I ranted about that. But then again, doctors are baffled. So who knows what's going on? Have you heard about sudden adult death syndrome or sudden arrhythmic death syndrome?
Yeah, this new thing that arose
Mhm.
because they needed a name for it, you know.
An umbrella term to describe unexpected deaths in young people. And this mysterious syndrome is said to have left doctors in Australia searching for more answers. I'd refer you to our video about this specific subject using the CDC's own website, their own data, their own publications, but it got banned. So you, I guess, draw your own conclusions. So there's such an outbreak of young, otherwise healthy individuals suddenly dying from heart failure that they've had to come up with a name for the syndrome, and they're baffled. Oh, but don't worry, the science has the answer.
So I know a couple. One's a doctor and another's a physiologist.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a 12-year-old boy. And the boy went to his 11 to 13-year-old checkup, and he got the HPV vaccine and all of that, which are, you know, tested. They're fine. They offered the COVID vaccine, and the doctor and the physiologist said no. And the nurse was baffled why they would say no. And
I mean,
and 12-year-old boy also already had COVID.
In fairness, it is the solar storms that are causing heart-related deaths.
Oh my God.
This is not a joke. This is not The Onion or Babylon Bee. This is a real
God. How did I
site.
not see this? Oh,
You're welcome. I'm here to bring you cheer.
Am I drinking myself to
of...
sleep tonight? Oh, the solar storms are.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You know, if that was because it caused a power flare that knocked your life support system off and you died, I would say, okay, I don't know enough about solar flares and electronics, but no. First of all, it wouldn't be specific to young people. It would be across the board. But oh my God, my head hurts.
Well, and that is what is so curious about this SADS is that they're talking about, one of the articles I read said people under 40, one said people under 50, but people who are young enough that they should not be having to deal with a heart condition unless they already have a diagnosed congenital condition. You know, I have friends.
Well, even I know a guy who's got a diagnosed congenital condition and he's not dropping over dead. You know, if we want to anecdote this thing, in fact, he's pretty damn healthy and sexy.
They're just, the narrative is king.
Speaking of sexy, we got to talk about the bike rider. Since we talked about fishing, we'll end with that. So let's keep going. But
the narrative is just so obviously grasping at straws that I don't understand why there's not more of a backlash than there has been.
What I have seen is climate change being blamed for the random people dropping over dead.
And that couldn't possibly be because what Biden and his party are trying to push right now is climate change is the number one threat to America and the world.
Well, it was the next step because we already saw editorials back in the thing. Now that we've seen the success on our climate with lockdowns, What's the next step? Well, climate change, lockdowns. Yeah. And we'll be eating mealworms. All right.
It must just be a coincidence that some of the, or at least all of the biggest funders I know of the narrative are also radical environmentalists. Bill Gates has long been, you can find video of him talking about how we have an overpopulation crisis, despite the fact that the population bomb has been debunked over and over again since it was first published. Just open your eyes, look out the door, and the population bomb has been debunked. And yet these people are overpopulation environmental zealots. And it just so happens that they're also the people pushing this narrative and the solution to it. Must be a coincidence.
Must be a coincidence. Well, you look at the different policies on both sides of who went what direction with this whole catastrophe, which it was, because lots of people died, and I had it and it wasn't fun, but on the other end, look at the policies trying to be pushed through based on what happened with COVID. Mm-hmm. I brought up the article a couple of times ago about the universal healthcare. These many people would have lived, which was all speculation, because they were not denied healthcare. We were denied healthcare because the government said doctors can't doctor. Mm-hmm. There was the UBI group, Universal Basic Income. If people just had this basic income, they would have been more fine during the pandemic. The welfare group, which everybody lost their jobs, so you need to be on welfare and be dependent on the government. All of these things all aligned with a certain side of the aisle. And if it was random, it would be split, right? If it was random, there would be right side agendas that benefited from it, and there would be left side agendas that benefit from it. And it's not random. So that's what I don't like. The world is chaotic, and the world is entropic, which implies randomness, and we have to be prepared for randomness. COVID was random in and of itself, but the motivational movements that went along with it were not, and that's easy to see. I mean, if you can't see it, sorry. Here's your, I almost use a word you're not allowed to use. Starts with an R. Here's your not very smart person certificate. You know what word I was thinking of.
Never go full. That has become a cult classic with the growing wokeness, which I find hilarious.
Well, and I heard a discussion on that word too, because and now that I'm not using it in context, I can say it in the word was retard. And it was someone having a discussion with someone else about why is it bad? And they're like, well, because it implies that, people use it as a derogatory term for blah, blah, blah. And goes, well, what about the word moron? Or imbecile? And it was a British guy, so he had words that I don't see very often. But he's like, these were actually medical terms back in this day and this day and this day and this day.
Have you ever seen someone use that word for someone who is actually mentally retarded?
No.
The last time I can recall, the only time really I can ever recall hearing someone say that to someone who was actually mentally retarded was in high school, because we had a couple of Downs kids that went to our high school. And I don't even remember who it was or the context, but somebody called him an effing retard, and 7 different people jumped all over that guy. And, it did not come to blows, but they told him what for. So normal, rational people don't do those kinds of things. You're not, so in that way, it's not derogatory. It would be insulting if you were using it as a derogatory expletive to put down someone who actually is suffering from mental retardation of some sort. That's not what we're doing here.
I think we can close that one out. Let's end on our bicycle
Okay.
guy story.
So
So
Sam had mentioned, you mentioned this when we were recording once.
I think we were
yeah.
recording. Yeah.
Yeah, about how gay guys love you for some reason. Yeah, because you brought up on one of our recordings when we were talking about sexy time or relationships or something, about how, if you ever get turned on by it, you'll give it a go, but you've got 42 years of experience to say it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. And
well,
I got to witness this
realistically,
firsthand.
30 some odd years,
Yeah.
because puberty and all that.
So I got to witness this firsthand when we're standing on this pier,
super random,
fishing, and just very randomly, because there's this park and this kind of walking trail behind us. There's people coming and going, people walking or jogging or whatever. And one of these people is a shirtless dude on a bicycle who veers off to the pier and stops beside Sam and just starts randomly chatting him up about how's it going, catch anything, stuff. And then it gets quiet and really awkward, and he just rides away. And the thought that went through my head was, man, that's what it feels like when I hit on someone. Did Sam just get hit on? Because that was awkward.
It was very awkward. And yes, it was at least throwing out the line to see if I would take the bait. It was
and my suspicion is that I honestly think it was because you were shirtless, and apparently that was advertisement to him.
Obviously. I mean, I look good shirtless.
You're not a gross hairy Neanderthal like I am. So
no. I am not a very hairy dude. Although we did discuss that my upper body is way less hairy, but my legs are actually hairier than yours.
Yep.
So that was kind of weird, but
I don't. But
I think it maybe there's just darker hair.
Somehow you were advertising to him. I think that must be it, because I don't want to admit that he didn't want to try talking to me. It makes me feel very hurt.
Oh, I don't know why. Do I give off like well, I kind of got a Dave Rubin look, maybe a little bit. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what kind of vibe I give off, but
I can confirm, though.
It's happened in real time. So next time we have a sexy time with Sam, we'll make sure we rehash that story. It's a good one. We're old men. We have to retell stories. That's exactly the rules.
Yep.
All right.
We'll see y'all next time. Maybe with some more.
Oh, we had new comments actually from someone other than Scott.
Was it Wheel of Time stuff, or was it on other stuff?
It was on this kind of stuff. Someone, Stephanie asked if, she has a specific question on volume load, which I'll just put that in a reply.
Okay.
Yeah, sets times reps times weight. Is this the total number over the sets? Yes, it is actually. So in case she hasn't listened this far, I'll put it in a comment. And then she's going to use our stripper squats. And then like the videos and saving for future use. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie. Hopefully you watched this far, and we will see you next time. Anybody else? Comment, like, subscribe, share, put us out there. This was kind of all over the place, but hopefully at least one of the subjects interests you, and we'll do it again next time.
So long.
So long.